Welcome, everybody, to Conversations That Matter. I am your host, Alex Newman, Senior Editor at The New American. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have a very special guest joining us today. His name is Tom Homan. I'm sure you have heard of him. He was actually the head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement during the Trump administration. He's held many senior posts dealing with border security, immigration, customs. He's also the president of a new organization, Border 911. He's a visiting fellow on border security and immigration at the Heritage Foundation, and he's the author of the book, Defend the Border, Save Lives. There are very few people on the planet who know as much about the U.S. border and our immigration system as Tom does. Tom, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start off with what's going on at the border right now. It looks like we have a surge in illegal immigration. It's been going on since Joe Biden took office. How serious is this? And in your view, is it deliberate?
Well, actually, it's absolutely deliberate. This isn't mismanagement. This is incompetence. This is by design. I'll explain that in a minute. But right now, we got over 5.5 million aliens have been encountered at the border since Joe Biden's been president, which is historic. The first year under his leadership, we had never before seen numbers first year that we thought were incredible. Never seen those kind of numbers in the history of this nation. Only to see the second year of Joe Biden's administration, he shattered that number. So we had two historic years of illegal immigration. And so the story right now is that they claim they decreased illegal immigration by 40 to 70%, depending on what news show you listen to. And that is not true. They're playing a shell game. Let me explain that. Just before the end of Title 42, they had about 10,000 entries, which was, again, historic for 10,000 illegal aliens in one 24-hour period. But what they chose to do, and I said they're going to do this months ago, they created certain programs, the CBP one app and other things, where they're actually going south of the border. NGOs are processing illegal aliens that would normally enter illegally, and they're simply processing them for parole and bringing them into the ports of entry. So, which is illegal. And there's 20 states filed a lawsuit, and they will lose that case. But if you look at the illegal entries right now, Border Patrol is averaging between 3,500 and 3,600 a day that entered illegally. You add to that the over 6,000 a day, every day that this administration is bringing to a port of entry, now you're at 9,500. If you add the gotaways, which is between 1,000 and 1,500 a day, you're still over 10,000. This is still historic. What this administration chose to do is take a large population and bring them to the port of entry so they can claim this is not admissible. These people can enter illegally. We brought them to the port of entry. It's a shell game. They're lying to the American people.
Amazing. So you mentioned that you think this is deliberate. Why would they want to do this? What is the real agenda here?
Well, here's why it's deliberate. Because Secretary Mayorkas was a deputy secretary in 2014-2015 under the Obama administration. Of course, Joe Biden was the vice president on that same administration. In 2014-2015, we had a border surge of family groups and so forth. How do we stop it? And I met with Deputy Secretary Mayorkas hundreds of times. And how we stopped it was we built detention facilities and held them long enough to see a judge, which took around 35 days. Those that got order removed, which is over 90%, 9 out of 10 people who claim asylum at a border don't qualify for asylum. It's just waiting for them to say something, get to the United States, and now they're in the wind. We detained them. 9 out of 10 lost their case. We put them on the airplane and sent them home, and the border numbers went down. Biden and Mayorkas knows this is how we dealt with it when they were deputy secretary and vice president. So what are they doing now with this surge? They're not detaining them. Many are being released without a court date. And for the 90% that get an order removal, Secretary Mayorkas says ICE can't arrest them. And Secretary Mayorkas has said being in the country illegally on its own is not enough for ICE to go look for somebody to arrest them. So they're doing the complete opposite of what they know worked for them in 2014, 2015. So they're doing the complete opposite of what they know works. That's why it's intentional. And why? I think two things. I think they perceive a future political benefit that many of these people will be future Democratic voters. And even if it doesn't get to that, it doesn't have to get to that. Because when Joe Biden signed 9 executive orders abolishing everything we did under the Trump administration, there's another thing he did. He overturned the Trump census rule, which Trump says illegal aliens won't be counted in the census. Biden says they're going to be. So these millions of people that are released in the United States that will go to sanctuary cities across the country, they'll be counted in the next census. So when they reproportionate seats in Congress, it's going to result in more seats in the House with Democrats. They know this. They have sold the security and sovereignty of this nation out for future political power.
Amazing. Well, with that in mind, Tom, there, of course, is a resolution in Congress right now to impeach Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas for this border crisis and other issues that he has been allegedly responsible for. Do you think impeachment is the appropriate strategy? Is that what Congress should be doing about this? And is there anything else Congress could do?
I've called for his impeachment for 2 years. As soon as he got in the secretary's job, I actually thought it would be a good pick from the secretary because, again, we're in the middle of border surge. I'm saying, okay, well, he knows how to deal with it. We fixed it in 2014, 2015, only to be very disappointed he did a complete 180. So, yes, he should be impeached. And people say, well, Democrats own the Senate, never going to actually come to fruition. But here's the message. When you do the impeachment hearings, when you do these oversight hearings, you're going to subpoena the right people, the right information, documents, and evidence to prove to every member of Congress that they are violating, not only ignoring the law, they're violating the law. And what they've done is brought so much harm to this country. So the evidence is going to come out. Now, the Democrats that are sitting there in the House, they can't ignore the evidence. And I think there's 17, there's 26. There's 26 Democrats who are facing tough re-elections in 2024, tough battleground states. So they got to make a decision. Do they ignore the evidence and not demand that this administration take steps to secure a border? Or are they going to risk it during the 2024 election, which is going to be very close in these 2024, 25 battleground states? But the oversight hearings will prove to the American people what's going on. And I think that may change the pressure put on this administration to do something to secure the border. So I think it's a well worth effort. I've been involved with member of Congress. I'm telling them, I'm advising who to call them to testify, what information to ask for, where you can find the information. Because I know where the bodies are buried. I've done this 34 years. I know where the place can. So I'm helping them to have these oversight hearings, to get the right people in there, subpoena the right evidence, and where they can find information that helps with impeachment.
Excellent. And so beyond impeachment of Mayorkas, is there anything else that you think Congress can do? I mean, a lot of analysts said that they gave up a really valuable opportunity when they didn't demand border security in exchange for raising the debt ceiling. Now the appropriations battles are heating up. Is there anything that you think Congress can do to try to force the Biden administration's hand when it comes to protecting the border? And also, same question for the states. Is there anything that state governments can be doing beyond what Governor Abbott and some of the others are doing to try to get the situation under control?
Well, some members of Congress are doing the right thing. We helped with the formulation of H.R. 2. That's a bill pending right now on border security. In H.R. 2, in various ways, within the bill is called H.R. 2. Within that bill, there are various things Congress is proposing, members of Congress, that will close a loophole that caused this crisis. Again, when President Trump was president, Congress, again, refused to work, but to do the right thing to secure the borders. The president took a series of executive orders. And that's a band-aid approach. It worked real well for the Trump administration, but Biden completely turned it around. What Congress needs to do is legislate laws that will stop the surge, will stop the loopholes. There's 3 loopholes, Congress. If they close these 3 loopholes, illegal immigration will drop by 85% a month. The 3 loopholes are this: asylum. When you come across the border, when you get initial asylum interviewed by an officer, the threshold is purposely really low. Because when they wrote that, they didn't want to accidentally send people back to their country to be persecuted or killed or tortured. So the threshold is real low, and the cartels teach the aliens what to say. A few key phrases. If you say this, then they'll release you into the United States, pending your hearing. But when you get to the hearing in front of the judge, the threshold is very high. So over 90% will pass that first interview because it's a very simple, low threshold interview. But when they get in front of the judge, that's when the proof needs to be given. And even though 90% pass their interview on the border, 91% fail in front of an immigration judge, the same people that did well on the border. So we asked Congress to fix the asylum rule where those 2 thresholds meet. Raise that initial threshold so they're not released in the country, only lose their case and not leave. The second loophole they can fix is the TVPRA, Trafficking Victims Protection Act. And it had good intent when they did it. So when children come across the border, if they're trafficked, they have certain protections from this country. However, here's what the DVPR says. If it's ascertained through interviews and investigations you're not a victim of trafficking, if you're from Mexico, you can be immediately returned. However, if you're from any other country, non-contiguous country, there's a whole process that takes years. So knowing that if you come across the border as a child, you're going to be detained, they're going to release you to a sponsor, and you're going to get many government benefits, and it's going to take years to go through your case. And even when you go through your case and you get the order removed, the government doesn't have the appetite to remove the 7-year-old, 8-year. So they need to fix the TVPR. Says once it's determined you are not really a victim of trafficking, you need to be removed to your host country, just like we do in Mexico. And lastly, the third loophole is a Florida settlement agreement that says this: if you're a family group come across the border, they can only be detained for 20 days maximum. Well, during the Obama administration, we had family groups. We put them in a family residential center. It took 35 to 40 days to have their hearing. 90% lost their case. We put them in airplane sent home. Now the Ninth Circuit does job. He said, "Well, I'm only going to let you home for 20 days." In my affidavit in that lawsuit, I said, if you do that, if you require us to release them in 20 days, which is not time enough to see a judge, and we have to release them, you're going to see the biggest surge of family groups you've ever seen. Of course, the opposition says Tom Homan's a fear monger, has no proof of this, but guess who was right? What happened? So if Congress would close those 3 loopholes and HR 2 does that, the border problem be 85% fixed. So yes, Congress can pass legislation to help.
Wow, fantastic. All right, folks, we're going to go to break. We'll be right back with Tom Homan. We'll ask him about national security concerns, human trafficking, and what you, the average citizen, can do to get this situation under control. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Alan Keyes, and I want to say a good word for the New American Magazine. Not only because Alex Newman has joined us as somebody who is periodically hosting a show, but because New American Magazine represents a alternative media that is willing to tell people the truth. Reading New American Magazine can keep you up to the minute on the issues that are challenging us as a people.
Visit thenewamerican.com today. Use the promo code Newman to get $10 off the price of a print subscription.
Welcome back to Conversations That Matter. I am your host, Alex Newman, here for the New American Magazine. We are with Tom Homan, former director of ICE, president of Border 911, one of the world's top experts on what is going on at our border and how to fix it. Tom, before we went to break, we talked a little bit about what Congress can do, and you mentioned, the child trafficking victims. There have been some whistleblowers who've come out and they've actually accused the Biden administration of being complicit in child trafficking, that they're giving some of these unaccompanied minors over to people who are obviously not family members. What is your view? Is there a human trafficking crisis at our border right now? And how much responsibility does the Biden administration bear for this?
Well, I've been enforcing immigration law since 1984. I can tell you that human trafficking, what's going on the southern border right now, is the largest I've ever seen in my career. And the administration is complicit. When we had children come across during the Trump administration, we would vet the sponsors that come forward and want to take custody of these kids. And understand that most of the sponsors are parents. They're already here illegally. They pay a smuggling organization to bring their child across the border. And what's the government do? At taxpayer expense, they actually deliver these children to the same person who hired a smuggling organization to smuggle that child, which is a felony. That's a clear conspiracy to smuggle, which is a felony. But since they're children, they say, well, we'll deal with this later. So what the Biden administration did, so when we're on the Trump administration, we get back on the vetting, we would vet not only the sponsor to make sure they're not a pedophile, make sure they had no criminal history, do a background check on them. We would vet everybody in that household to make sure there wasn't a pedophile living in that household, there wasn't a gang member living in that household. The Biden administration, they have so many children come across. Since he's been president, they've had over 350,000 children cross that border. So they're concerned about the optics, because the secretary kept saying, "Oh, we got no crisis, no crisis. We have a secure border." The worst thing this administration perceives is if there's overcrowding and places are overfull, either with children or family groups, whatever, we can't keep telling people that the border is secure because it's obvious the optics are bad. We got overcrowding. So this administration has been more concerned with the optics than the crisis itself. So the instructions to the various agencies were, we want you to process as quick as possible, release as quick as possible, because there's no overcrowding, then there's nothing to see. So they cut the vetting down extreme from what the Trump administration did. So the vetting is done so quickly, and sometimes not at all, to release these kids quickly. These kids are being released to people they should be released to. And as a point of my remarks, as of right now, there are over 100,000 children that the government can't find. They can't find the sponsors. They can't find the children. And there's already been, and I've said for a long time, I said, many of these children are going to be forced into forced labor by these so-called sponsors. They'll be living with pedophiles. They'll be in pornographic movies. Some of these kids are living a life that is nothing but short of a nightmare. And that just breaks my heart. And to prove my point, in the last couple of months, there's been 3 or 4 meat packing facilities that they found underage children working at a meat packing facility. Matter of fact, there's one facility they found the children working on a midnight shift, cleaning up the entrails when no one else is in the building. So many of these children are in bad ways. It's because this administration not only enticed them to come with promises of DACA and promises it's going to be catch and release, you won't be detained. And I told ICE you can't be removed if you're just here illegally, and we're going to give you free health care. You know, all the things this administration promised them, they enticed the most vulnerable people in the world to come to this country. Then they cut the vetting down to almost nothing. And we wonder why there's 100,000 missing children. So that is the downside of opening the border like they did. I've been preaching for years, and that's why my name of that book, Defend the Border, Save Lives. When you secure the border, you save lives. Let me say this. People want to attack the Trump administration and myself that we're inhumane, we're racist, we're whatever. It's a bunch of crap. But when we had illegal immigration down 83%, think about this. Doctors Without Borders did a study. 1/3 of women, 31% of women that make that journey through the use of cartels get sexually assaulted. So when we had 83% less people coming, how many women weren't being raped? How many children were coming across that river? How many children didn't get released in the United States? How many non-suspected terrorists didn't come across the border? How many pounds of fentanyl didn't get into the border because the border was secured and shut down, border patrol vigilant, 100% on duty? How many billions of dollars did the cartels not make? So you can call the Trump administration anything you want. The Trump administration saved lives, not only migrant lives, it saved American lives.
Yep, no doubt about it. And on that note, I want to ask you about the national security implications, Tom. Obviously, this is a huge subject, a very sensitive subject, but I'm getting reports from people who are in Mexico, people even down in the Darien Gap, trying to monitor what's going on there. And I'm hearing that huge numbers of young Chinese military-aged males are coming across the border. They're being directed up here with help from the UN, with help from various so-called charities and even U.S. government agencies, that terrorists are coming across, jihadists. How concerned should we be from a national security perspective that hostile operators, maybe even special forces intending sabotage or other things, are coming across the border hoping to do harm to Americans?
Well, I've been saying this for the past year and a half, and I mean it. Out of all the issues on the board, my biggest concern is the national security issue. I think what's happening right now is the biggest national security failure this country's seen since 9/11. Because here's the facts. The Border Patrol's already arrested, I think they're up to like 217 people on the terrorist watch list. That's what they've arrested. But if you take into account, right now there's about 1.8 million known gotaways. These are people who cross the border. They were captured on video, drone traffic, or central traffic, but Border Patrol couldn't respond because they're too tied up, making baby formula, changing diapers, and making hospital rooms for these family groups. 70-80% of agents are off the line, taking care of this surge. So when you take 70-80% of the agents off the line and they end up arresting 216, 217 non-suspected terrorists, since there's so many agents off the line, there's 1.8 million gotaways. Think about that, 1.8 million gotaways. Now, the Border Patrol's arrested people from 171 different countries. Many of these countries are sponsored with terror. They've arrested, let's say, 217 or whatever. How many of 1.8 million came from a country that sponsors terror? If you think that number is zero, then you're an idiot. just by the mere facts of percentages, they were arrested 217. And terrorists don't want to be arrested. They're trained how to invade law enforcement. These 217, they're obviously weren't well trained, or just we were lucky to catch them coming across. But we know no spectators coming across that border, and the numbers prove it. Now, people ask me all the time, well, how many crossed home and how many terrorists entered the country illegally? I said, I don't know, but someday we're going to find out. It's going to be a bad day for America. So yeah, it's a huge national security issue. We do have thousands of Chinese in the last 2 years across the border wearing camo. And a lot of these, not just China, there's a lot of people from the Central American countries that are military age. I actually went down a few weeks. We talked to a lot of people crossing the border. We talked to them before the border to arrest them, and you'd be surprised how many of these young men were in the military. If you look at the UACs, unaccompanied children, 70% of UACs are between the ages of 15 and 17. 16, 17 is military age in Central America. So there are a lot of ex-military come across. There's a lot of Chinese coming across. They've arrested people from Turkey. They've arrested people from Syria. They've arrested people from Iran. They've arrested people from North Korea. I mean, this should scare the hell out of every American. It scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, it is very concerning. Tom, we're just about out of time, but tell us a little bit about the new organization you are leading, Border 911. What can normal Americans, just average everyday citizens, do to get involved here to try to deal with the amnesty, with the sanctuary cities, with the out of control border? What are some things people can do, and how do people find your organization?
Well, Border 911 is just starting. I got a whole series of experts. Mark Morgan, who is the commissioner of CBP under Trump. I got Jason Jones, works for Newsmax. He's a criminal cartel expert. He ran the Texas Department of Public Safety Intelligence Program. He is embedded with cartels. So we got Mark Morgan, who ran the Border Patrol. We got Jason Jones, who's a cartel expert out of the state of Texas. We have Derek Maltz, who's a DEA agent, and his specialty is the fentanyl smuggling and the effects of fentanyl in the United States. We got Sarah Carter, who works for me on Fox News. Once you go to, you see who we have. We have the brightest minds on border security in this nation. So what we're asking, people, once the website will be up in about a week, so people can go there in about a week. But in the meantime, and even after the website's up, what can they do? Demand your members of Congress take action. And a lot of people say, well, my senator's Republican and I can't, I don't really need to talk to him. Yes, you do. Because you mentioned it earlier. Why are Republican congressmen and senators negotiating anything with the Dems? Why did they vote for that bill back in December? 17 U.S. senators voted yes on the infrastructure bill, if you remember that. And I was upset. Why would you give away that leeway to the House? Because we were going through the House in January. In that bill they passed in December, not $1 for the Border Patrol. We were still in the midst of the biggest national security issue the country ever seen on the border. And these 17 Republican senators voted for something, gave the Border Patrol nothing. Didn't give a dollar to border security. So what you can tell your Republican senators and congressmen, if they care about this nation, if they care about the humanitarian issue on the border, the public safety issue on the border, Border Patrol arrested 87,000 convicted criminals come across that border. The 1.8 million that we don't know who the hell they are, what they came here for, how many gang members, how many are carrying fentanyl, how many are arrested terrorists. If you care about this, you tell your Republican senator, don't sit down and negotiate squat with the Democrats until they prove to you, show us one thing you're going to do to slow the flow. Until the Democrat administration takes action to address this national security issue, again, the biggest national security issue this country's seen since 9/11, then don't negotiate anything with them. We now have Congress, we have the House, we control the purse strings. If they don't take steps to protect the safety and security of this country, then shut it down. Don't give them a single dollar. Watch out when they come around. There are things the Republicans can do, and you need to demand from your representative they take action, or they can leave in the next election too.
Excellent. Tom Homan, former ICE director, head of Border 911. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your insights. We sure appreciate it. Hopefully we'll get you back for an update soon. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Alex Newman. This is Conversations That Matter. I hope you'll share this out with your friends, with your congressmen, with your state representatives, with your sheriff. This is, as Tom mentioned, a critical national security issue. We've got to get this information out. We've got to get people involved, and we've got to get this under control. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, God bless you all. Awesome. Tom, thank you so much. That was brilliant. Really appreciate it.